And the U.S. Federal Reserve's Open Markets Committee just concluded their 2 days of meetings. Many were anxious about what they might or might not do. And some are actually surprised by what they did. Here to discuss is the author of The Common Sense Bull, Ghabour. Hey, Eddie, thank you so much for being with us. We are most pleased to have you. Most people expected the Fed to either stay at the previously anticipated number of rate hikes that they'd set for this year, 2, or even maybe go to 1. I think I'd heard you on another network talk about that a while back. But the Fed says there will be zero, not a rate hikes this year, and that the Fed funds rate, that's the borrowing rate for our audience that banks can get overnight, currently now at 2.25 and to 2.5. What do you make of what the Fed did today, Eddie? And thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm actually very surprised that the Fed came out so dovish. And you're right. I was expecting 1 rate hike in the second half of this year. And I think they're making a mistake by trying to predict out 2 years. Not only are they saying no rate hikes this year, they're saying only 1 rate hike next year. And my concern is in this type of economic environment, it's too hard to predict out 2 years in advance.
So I want to ask you a little bit about growth, because they also made their economic projections for growth. They said 2.1. I think the Office of, or rather the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, said it was going to be 2%. But the Office of Management Budget, part of the Trump administration, of course, says they're still looking at 3%. Do you think that CBO and that maybe they're just too pessimistic, the Fed and the CBO, and maybe OMB is just more positive about things going on perhaps in the future? What's your take? You wrote this book on being a bull. So what do you think?
I think we're going to fall somewhere in the middle. I do think the Fed has gotten too overly concerned with the economy, because if you listen to the minutes today, a lot of it was talking about the fourth quarter slowdown. And remember, there was a lot of damage done in the stock market in the fourth quarter, and I think that's what reflected some of the poor economic numbers. I think the backdrop for 2019 is going to have some strong economic numbers in the second half. So I'm not saying we're going to have 3% growth, but I think we're not going to be in the low 2s. I think we'll be somewhere in the middle is my prediction.
Yeah, well, I will take that. I'd like more than 2. Boy, I remember, during the campaign, and this happens with all candidates, the president was talking about, then candidate Trump, we're going to have 4, 5, 6% growth. I mean, these sort of crazy numbers that I said, yeah, that's the campaign trail, Republicans and Democrats. But boy, I would sure hope to get more than the 2 or 2.1. That said, one of the things, Eddie, that could really change would be a trade deal with China. But I guess it depends on the details, right? So if things were going to move forward with the economy because of a China deal, what would that deal need to entail?
That deal needs to properly articulate what they're going to do with tariffs. If you listen to earnings reports with companies that are multinationals, like FedEx came out the other day, their concern is the tariffs overseas. So when we get a trade deal done, and I do think we're going to, I think that's going to be what catapults the market to new highs and gets the economy really going in the second half. But it has to disclose what they're going to do with tariffs, because President Trump today said they're going to continue putting the tariffs in place until they see China delivers on their promises. So until that's clear, we are still not going to have complete direction on that, and it's still going to drag on the global economy.
And what do you think about the whole, the 2 sort of bogeys out there, Eddie, are, I mean, I agree with you. They need to say what specifically is going to happen on tariffs. But the bogeys seem to me to be stealing of intellectual property and then support of state-sponsored enterprises. Those 2 are like, they're ever present, they're there. Do you think for the U.S. economy to pick up that those need to be addressed in a forthright way, or do you think that can be a little bit more soft around the edges?
It can be a little bit more soft around the edges, because the intellectual property is a big deal. We know it's been an issue for a while. The problem is it's such a big issue, I don't think you're going to get a complete comprehensive deal done by the first half of this year. I think you're going to see it in bits and pieces. And what the market wants to see and the economy wants to see is the tariffs first. So I think it can be soft around the edges, and we can still get the boost that I'm anticipating in the second half.
Well, that's also positive news. You are a bull. Eddie Ghabour, we thank you so much. We hope you'll come back. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you so much.